Back at it.
Back at it with another episode of Light Skin here with Big Magas himself, the superintendent. I'll let him introduce himself to you.
I'm John Magas, superintendent of Duluth Public Schools, and glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you.
For those who don't know, I'm Pez.
I'm Kantrell.
Yep. And my dog Naya, she back here just chilling. So let's dive into it.
Sure.
Yeah, let's get it.
Let's dive into it. Start from the beginning. Start from baby Magas and go from there.
Yep,
Sure.
Lil John and the Eastside Boys.
All right. No, I grew up pretty much in the middle of nowhere in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
My parents started off on this. They lived in Lower Michigan. They moved up there, and basically they had like a tiny little farm, and they sold that and moved out to this place called Shelter Bay, and it was on Lake Superior. It was a tiny little house,
Yep.
middle of nowhere. The town was so small that when I was a teenager, you'd have to go to the next town because there weren't any girls in our town.
Yep.
We'd have to go to the Dairy Queen, check stuff out.
Yep.
But it was very small. Lived in a so I lived there, and I went to the school, the Dearton Elementary, and it had about 50 kids. It was a 2-room school for grades kindergarten through 6th grade. So it was super tall and tiny.
Crazy.
And then I ended up moving from there and going on to middle school and high school in Marquette, Michigan. So,
Okay.
yeah, Marquette was cool.
How far was Marquette from where you grew up?
It was 25 miles, but when we took the bus in the morning, because it went down all the side roads, the bus ride in the morning was 2 hours,
Yeah, all right.
and the bus ride back was an hour and a half. So it was
Golly.
crazy. 3.5 hours a day on the bus, and couldn't figure out why, but people used to tease me because I'd sleep on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like at 6 a.m. if you're riding a bus for 2 hours, aren't most people,
I'm knocked out.
shouldn't be sleeping, right?
I'm knocked out.
Exactly.
All right. So yeah, after high school, what was next?
I went to Western Michigan for a year,
Oh.
and it was okay, but I found it wasn't really for me. And then I transferred back up to Northern Michigan, and was going to school there, and basically going to school there. But when I was growing up, it was my background. A lot of times I think when people see somebody in a job with responsibility or wearing a suit or something, they think, oh, you must have come from money, or you must have come with everything made for you. But grew up with a lot of poverty, and my dad lived in Texas when I was about 3. He left, and my mom went through some hard times, and it was interesting, but not interesting in a good way. Interesting in a hard way. But
how many siblings?
I've got one brother.
Okay.
One brother, Jim.
Older, younger?
He's older, and he's a musician down in Chicago.
Oh, cool.
Goes by James Marlin Magas.
James, that's a tough name.
It is tough.
So
It is tough.
It's pretty good musician.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you brought up music. I was wondering, like, in your earlier years, like, what was the music like in your household?
Yeah.
So, like, what was the type of things all of you guys were listening to?
I'm thinking about like when I was a teenager and stuff. I was kind of more a little bit of a punk rocker, and
I can see that.
had all sorts of odd haircuts and mohawks, and dyed my hair all different colors.
Yeah,
And stuff.
I did the mohawk too. I hated it.
Yeah.
I look back at
Yeah.
every picture and be like, oh my
Yeah.
god.
What made you do that? Spike my hair in the middle of my head.
God.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Exactly.
Disgusting.
But I think we wanted to be rebels, right?
Most definitely.
And then I think in some ways, like, I still try and be a little bit of a rebel. And I think in some ways, like, I learned that you could change systems more from the inside than you could just trying to rally against them from the outside.
Most definitely.
So in some ways, that's part of what I try and do is like somehow I made it in and through the system and to the place where I am. And so now I'm trying to change things for the better for people.
Yeah.
But
So, all right, going back to college.
Sure.
When you first entered college, did you know what you wanted to go for? Or was it kind of the first year just, getting gen eds done, figuring it out?
Yeah.
And
I went through like tons of majors.
Okay.
I like had a new major every semester, practically. And when I was a freshman, actually, I was a communications major, and I had my cousin's husband. He was a producer for CBS Sports, and he got me a job actually helping out in the announcer's booth at the Pontiac Silverdome.
Oh, that's
for
dope.
the
That is
Lions.
fire.
That's dope.
But I didn't realize what I had. I was like, oh, this is cool, but I'm going to move up to Northern Michigan. So I ended up not following through with that, but it was cool. It was like a year in
The
board.
whole time.
Yep, I was running, getting Coney dogs and getting stat books and things like that.
That's what's
But
up.
then I moved up to Northern, and I was an art major for a while and a philosophy major for a while, and then I started taking. Took a lot of English classes and stuff, but then I started taking Spanish classes, and I actually started going down to Mexico, and so I had this roommate in college, and he would jump trains. He had a big dog, a big Saint Bernard, and he'd jump on trains, and he'd ride the trains up to Alaska, and he'd crab fish up there. And he would come home like after like 3 weeks of work and making like $20,000.
Oh yeah, I bet it was crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. And so I was telling my dad, I was like, Dad, I'm gonna like ride the rails up to Alaska and do some crab fishing. And he said, that's crazy, John. You're gonna get yourself killed. So but he knew I wanted some adventure, and so he was saying there's this study abroad program down in Mexico.
Okay.
And so I really wanted to travel, wanted to see stuff, and so I actually I had a scholarship, but I wanted to get down there as cheap as possible so I could save my money. And I got on a bus, a Greyhound bus in Marquette, Michigan, and I took the bus down to the border of Mexico. 3 days on the bus.
That's crazy.
It was crazy. But then, so I took the bus to Mexico, walked across the border, and I spent about 2 years living in Mexico, back and forth. But took the train from Mexico down to Mexico City and lived down there.
Okay.
And
so at that time, like you say, you was taking Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So
I wasn't even taking Spanish before I went.
Okay.
I could say, I couldn't even speak
Hola,
Spanish. So
como
it
te
was
llamas?
Me llamo John.
Yeah, that's
Donde está baño?
E too.
Right, but then got on the train and figured it out.
All right. So when you got to Mexico, what was your thoughts? Like, all right, because did you research on where to live yet, or jobs, or
that was crazy too.
Yeah.
So when I got to the border, I was going to take the train down because that was the cheapest, most interesting way, and so I made the whole trip for $75 to Mexico City from Marquette, Michigan.
Never.
So I get to Mexico City, and I go to the university, and I'm supposed to go to the university and sign up for housing.
Yep.
And I get to this Centro de Enseñanza para Extranjeros, which is like the Center for Foreign Studies.
It was too smooth.
Exactly.
Compañero, mi caro, te
But anyway, I get to the school, and it's all chained up, and it says like closed for vacations. And so it was closed for vacations, and I had to basically find a friend of a friend of a friend who knew somebody, and they let me sleep on their couch for a couple weeks.
Okay.
And so then I ended up getting set up there. But I think that growing up, you think about cultural stereotypes, right?
Yep.
And I think that when I was thinking about Mexico, like I knew a little bit about what it would be like, but I think that you become so pre-programmed with things, and you think that it's people wearing serapes and leaning against cactuses and stuff like that. Yeah. It wasn't like that at all. Mexico City at the time, it was the largest city on the planet. It had about 30 million people. It was super cosmopolitan, and like basically everybody dressed up for work and things like that. So it was a different, totally different vibe. Different vibe than growing up in the UP.
Okay.
So I lived down there for a while, taught English, had a good time. My mom always was saying like, you're just going down there to hang out on the beach and drink beer and talk to girls. And I was like, yeah, but I'm getting Spanish credits.
You know what I'm saying?
Let me balance my life out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All right. So 2 years in Mexico teaching Spanish.
Teaching English.
Teaching English.
Yeah.
So, what point did you say, all right, it's time for me to go back to the States?
Well, I had so I finished my degree, and then I went back down. I was working down there for a while and just traveling, and then I just decided to come back up and was working in a restaurant, washing dishes, and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, waiting tables some.
Yep.
And I met the woman who was my first wife, and she was going out to Washington State, and just turned out that she ended up having like extra room in the moving truck, and I thought, I think I'll move out to Washington State. So I lived out in Washington State for 10 years.
Okay.
Out there I was started as a teacher's aide, like paraprofessional, working in special ed, and then got a job teaching teaching English and GED classes in a beef slaughter plant at this place called Washington Beef, and I learned right away. We were just talking about this. This won't fall down.
Yeah.
Now it's falling. But anyway, that was an interesting place to be a teacher. You know, I got the full tour of the beef slaughter plant, and I still would eat meat and eat hot dogs and stuff like that. So there were some gross things there, but I think that the people worked really, really hard, and it was dangerous work.
Yeah.
I remember one time I went into the human resources office, and this woman had a hook that had gone into her eye socket. It didn't pierce the eyeball, but it like went into the eye socket, and she had this hook like in her face. And she was relatively okay. I mean, afterwards she had like a tiny bit of a tiny bit of a scar there.
Yeah.
But like to imagine like to have a meat hook go into your eye socket.
Yeah.
But
that ain't familiar.
people
Meat hooks are big.
Bro,
Exactly.
huge.
And when I think sometimes when you hear, and this might be a little political, but when you hear about hear about immigration issues and how horrible it is that people are coming to the United States, I know a lot of people who came to the United States and have come to the United States to work their tails off to make a better life for their families.
Yep.
And I actually have huge respect for the people that are coming to do the work. And of course, it's better if people are coming through the regular means. But it's important that we have people who care and people who are working hard. So then I ended up becoming a teacher out there.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So it was good.
All right. So, going from that meat slaughter plant that you were at,
Yep.
what was the next step for you? Where did you go after that?
There was a high school in town,
Okay.
and they needed a Spanish teacher,
Okay.
and so I started teaching Spanish, and it was in Toppenish, Washington, and
Okay.
it was on the Yakima Reservation for the Yakima Indian Nation. So interesting place to work, and very diverse school. It was 80% Latino,
Okay.
15% American Indian, and 5% white,
Yeah.
and it was also very impoverished. We had about 97% free and reduced lunch.
Okay. Yeah.
And so basically they made everybody, it was like free for everybody at that point. But it was a really good school. I mean, like people worked their tails off for people, and it was very innovative. So I feel like I was lucky because I had a lot of good mentors out there. And then I also started taking classes at, there was this Heritage College, which now became Heritage University. It was the Yakima Nation ran this college,
cool. Yeah.
and so I got my teaching license there, and then I got my master's degree in ESL, English as a Second Language, and bilingual education.
Yep.
So it was really interesting. Sometimes when you're in environment, you don't realize what you're being blessed with.
Yeah.
Like you have like these really rich experiences, and then you come out of it and realize like, oh, not everybody went to
Yeah.
school.
And that's good because that means you was enjoying that moment.
Yeah.
Like what was going on, you wasn't
Yeah.
thinking about what was next. It was like, all right, I'm here. I'm about to dive deep into this.
Yep.
You know, whatever happens next, it just happened.
Yeah.
So, all right, what was the path going from a teacher to where you are now?
Sure.
You know, how did you get?
Sure.
What was that road travel?
So I was a teacher there at Toppenish High School, and I remember, like, as an English teacher, sometimes I think about what you learn from like your life experiences, and I remember this student Miguel,
Okay.
who was in my class, and he was super smart, and he was failing class because he would never come with his homework. He would never do his homework, and I
We
was
got some of them.
yeah, exactly.
We got some of
But
them.
I at the time I was thinking, well, why don't you do your homework? Why don't you just do your homework? And I wasn't always the best student in school either. I wasn't always doing my homework, but I was just wondering why not. And I ended up actually I was helping my wife at the time, and I was doing some interpretation. She was a reporter out there, and I went to this place where there had been a dog mauling. And it happened to be at the apartment where Miguel lived. It was one of his younger brothers.
Yeah. Oh. Okay.
And anyway, I got to know the family, and there were like 10 people living in a 1-bedroom apartment. And so then that was like a big wake up call for me. Like I didn't realize the luxuries that I had in life, where I had a place where I could do homework and such. They, basically when there's 10 people living in an apartment, it's pretty hard to find a quiet moment, a quiet place. So I didn't realize the privilege that I had, and that was a big wake up call for me.
Yeah.
Anyway, I decided that there were only certain things I could change as a teacher, and so I decided I wanted to learn some things and go to a different level.
I ain't crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, we ended up moving to Spokane, Washington. I ended up working at Gonzaga University.
Sure.
I was teaching graduate classes there and teaching English as a second language to international students there and stuff for a while.
Cool.
And I got I was working on my director of English as a second language license.
Okay.
And my old principal came back with the assistant principal, and he said, "Hey, I'm moving up to the next level, and the principal, he's going to need an assistant principal. Why don't you change your license and get a principal's license?"
Yeah.
So I did, and they hired me as the high school assistant principal there. So I was high school AP there.
That's
And
what's up.
it was Toppenish was an interesting place. They were on the upswing, but they definitely had some really serious gang situations and a lot of conflicts. There were drive-bys and stuff all the time. I remember when I was there was a quadruple homicide where somebody just bludgeoned like a whole bunch of people. It was a challenging place. But I was, so as the high school AP, I was my only job was student behavior, student discipline, which was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Doing all the discipline, and I remember the first year for the senior prank, they came in and they basically did some stuff, and they spray painted on the walls FUCK Magas, except they actually did it 2 years in a row. But the second year, I was happy because they spelled the F word right.
I'm proud of
The first year, they spelled F-U-K. But yeah, but basically, I was just trying to work with behavior and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I think sometimes when you start, you think it's all about like punishment is going to result in consequence, and that's going to change behavior.
Yeah.
But I'd say after doing behavior for years and years, I learned that punishing people doesn't do very much to change
at all.
behavior.
Yeah, it just causes a lot of resentment and pushback. Or you get looked at as a bad. Oh, he don't care. He just wanna.
Right.
He just here to write me up, or I can. So.
Right.
What was going apart from the kind of, I don't know, just purely behavior side? What was the rewarding part for you of being a principal? As you got into the job, what was it that kind of kept you there and kept you wanting to move up?
Well, really, the reason why I did it was because I felt like there were, as a teacher, you could teach a great class, you could have a great lesson, you could have like good rapport with your students, you could have good relationships with your parents, which was awesome. But then sometimes I felt like there were only certain things that you could change within your own classroom, and you couldn't really affect the whole school. And so I started thinking, well, maybe I wanted to get into this and be a principal. So I could create some of that change. And so I think really focusing on like, how do you improve a school? How do you take, and I don't mean it in a derogatory way, but it's kind of there's a little bit of a game to it that you're thinking like, okay, this is where we're starting from. How are we going to have better results? What are the plays we have to make? What are the things we have to do to bring people forward and have better outcomes for kids? So it was like you would make changes and you'd see the progress and you'd learn from your mistakes and then go on from there.
Yeah, that's kind of like.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask my question after, but.
Well, keep it in. Keep it
I
in.
got you.
That's what he was saying is like what we do. Like, so I went to school. One of my majors was physical education, coaching minor, and I always thought I want to be a PE teacher. I just think it'd be a lot of fun, things like that. But then I realized like I wanted to change more than just a classroom setting.
Right.
So even like here at NYS, we do a lot of community work, and a lot of times we get down on ourselves because it's like we get these kids for X amount of hours a day, but then they go home.
Yeah.
So it's like almost every day we got to start over again.
Right.
Exactly.
So now we try to figure out every day, okay, how do we make that lasting impact not only on the kids, but on the parents, the full community around us, other community leaders, working with you, in ISD 709, as well as other entities around. Because that lasting change is what's going to stick, but what's also going to cause more change in the community,
right?
As a whole,
right?
So,
And I think that's what gives life purpose, right? I mean, you can be happy in a job and you can make money and whatever, but I think being able to affect change, that's what makes the big difference.
Definitely.
And sometimes you're affecting change. There's all sorts of different levels to affect change. Like when I was a teacher, I felt like then you really knew your students, and sometimes you wonder, like the higher up you go, sometimes you start wondering, like, do I really have an effect on things?
Yeah.
Like, is it really
Most
making a change?
definitely. I have that question every day sometimes.
Exactly. But then sometimes you see like the ripples of something you did that do have an effect, and then you're thinking like, hey, I remember when this started, and you see the progress. So I think that makes a big difference.
Hell yeah.
But,
I wanted to ask you, you spoke about some of the challenges with the youth as a principal. I wanted to know some of the challenges, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the audience wanted to know a lot of the challenges you dealt with as a principal pertaining to, I guess, the political side.
Sure.
Like certain things that you can't do that you probably want to, but it's just a lot of red tape and shit in your way.
Well, I think sometimes it's red tape, sometimes it's apathy. I mean, I think people need to believe in kids, and
Most
people need to
definitely.
have relationships with kids. And I think sometimes, I believe most, if not all, teachers get into it because they want to make a difference for kids. And sometimes some people get a little burnt out, and sometimes people maybe stay with it longer than they should. Because if you're not there for the kids, you should find something else that fills your cup.
Yep.
And I remember sometimes, I remember as a principal one time a kid coming up to me and saying, I really don't think my teacher, Mrs. X, likes me. And I was thinking, I mean, I almost said it, but I was like, well, she doesn't really like any of you, so. but like you shouldn't have that, right?
Yeah,
So
most
I
definitely.
think that if a teacher was struggling, how do you give them support, right? How do you help them be a better teacher? How do you help them improve if they're having challenges? That's super important.
Yeah.
And then if somebody doesn't want to change, or they don't realize how they need to change, and they just if there's something that's just not working, then sometimes you have to try and coach that person towards doing something else if you try everything and they're not showing improvement.
Yeah, definitely. I heard somebody say one time, and you just mentioned it, like there are a lot of people who get into professions for the right reasons, but they stay for the wrong reasons. And that always like hit me. And even in like the job that we do, and I know like even with growing up with teachers, or even these days working with teachers, is sometimes you get to the point where you say, oh, it's too much. I don't like what I do, but it's too much to change careers at this point.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you're in a position where you are supposed to get in these kids' lives, or in families' lives or whatever, and not saying teachers are babysitters, but at the same time, as much as you don't want to say they aren't, they are. You watching kids for 6 to 8 hours a day, which is crazy. On top of trying to teach and then handle behaviors and everything else, but the same that we go through here, we like to provide we want to provide safe spaces and opportunities for kids to grow and learn different skills and things like that, but we got to deal with the behaviors every day. Right. We got to deal with parents and the behaviors of the parents every day, which is, then you realize, okay, now I know why your kids do it. And we got to ask our question all the time is, why do we continue to do what we do? Is it, she just left me back there. Do I do it because of the money? Nah, I can tell you that right now. Because, as a teacher or in our position, it's not like you're going to do this to get rich, but, are you doing it for the image, or are you doing it because you really want to make a difference,
Yeah.
And that's something that we have to ask ourselves every day and then challenge each other on, especially as administrators, like, when you meet with the teachers, do y'all have those conversations of like, why are y'all here? Why are y'all doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of like the focus of our beginning of the year kickoff is like to get back in touch with your why.
Yep.
Like, why are you doing this? And I think you have to do that like on a regular basis, and almost daily. Like when you get up in the morning, you got to get up and you got to do hard things, but you better know why you're doing it. And I think if you're not in touch with your why, that's when you start having problems. And I actually think being superintendent, because I started I got hired right during COVID. I got hired 2 weeks into when COVID started is when I got hired, and I started a couple months after that. There was no way to make everybody happy.
Oh yeah, it never is.
Never. But especially then, some people wanted no school whatsoever and everybody wearing masks, and other people said open it up completely and no masks and whatever. And there was this just constant clash, and not just on that, but on so many different things because we're trying to do things in different ways, and I realized at that point there was no way as superintendent I could make everybody happy, and so I had to do a deep dive into myself and figure out what is it that is the right thing to do, and what's going to let me sleep at night. Because if you sell a little piece of your soul to make people happy, you're not necessarily going to be doing the right thing. And so really asking to yourself on a regular basis, at your core, is this the right thing to do, and is it the right thing to do for kids?
Definitely. And then you, like you said, when the more you start to take away from yourself, the more you aren't enjoying what you're doing, and then you got to ask, am I in this for the right reasons now? Like what we were talking about before. So it is the question we ask ourselves, because there's a lot of times politics want to get involved with what we do. We say, get that out of here. Our goal is what is best for the individual in front of us. Whether that's the popular thing or the least popular thing. It's something we got to ask ourselves every day is what's the best for this individual in front of us? Whether it's something they want to hear or not, it's what do they
And
need?
9 times out of 10, it's the thing that they don't want to hear.
Facts.
And it's
But
the
they
thing
know
that,
it. They know it's the truth. And that's why they push back, because they never push back on the easy stuff. It's always, and it can be something simple as working with kids and they say, oh, why teacher don't like me? I say, why? Well, they was mad because I was out of class for 15 minutes.
Why were you out of class
what
for 15
was you doing for 15 minutes that you was in class? It's not that the teacher don't like you. The teacher's trying to hold you accountable, to something that you were supposed to be doing. Because guess what? If they don't hold you accountable, then they're going to get in trouble. And they say, okay, why didn't you talk to this student about this? And that's the same thing we would do. We discipline kids, or sometimes we have to kick kids out for certain things. And parents say, oh, why did you kick it? This kid was just vaping in the bathroom. Or we just caught this kid smoking, or they was fighting. And sometimes we get pushback on that. Well, they young. That's exactly why they getting disciplined now. I would rather handle these issues now while they in this stage where they can grow and still figure themselves out than they get older. Because I already know. I'm 32. It ain't much I be wanting to change about myself. I mean, I'm stubborn, for real. But I think being in this job, it helps you be open to more anyway, so.
Right. Like you mentioned, when you hear something that makes you defensive and makes you want to shut down, that's probably something you need to lean into and figure out, okay, there's probably some element to truth it. This is some bitter medicine, and what is it that I'm supposed to learn from this, right?
What is, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. What is, right now, Superintendent Magas, what is the biggest challenge for you being in this role? And then the second question is, what is the biggest joy being in the role?
Sure. That's a tough one. I think that right now, I would say I want to make sure that we have better outcomes for all kids. And right now, if we look at all of our outcomes for kids could be better than they are. But especially if you look at the kids that have been historically underserved, you look at our black and brown kids, our kids from poverty, our special ed kids, their outcomes are not where they need to be. And it's not because people aren't trying, but something's not working. And so how do we as a system make the changes and fix that? And we also have a lot of limitations that we have to overcome. Right now, we have some big financial hurdles to overcome. And so last night with the school board, we passed a resolution. We're going back out for a referendum again. So
Okay.
we were 291 votes away last November on the referendum, and that's too close, right? We're almost there out of 33,000 voters, and so we're going to go back out and try and get new money for technology and for replacement for CT equipment, but it's because that's the next step to close those gaps. And I also think about how do we build trust? How do we build trust with the community? And I would say you gotta think about what you're saying, right? The job can be political, but I would say that sometimes Duluth can be a little judgmental.
Oh, very.
Most definitely.
Duluth, let me tell you
Most
something.
definitely.
Duluth, I love Duluth to
Yeah.
death. I've been here for 7.5 years. The passive aggressive thing is not even. It's not even a thing. It's more of we like you or not, and it's just the old school Duluth. You know, of like if you ain't from here, we don't really want you around. But then you hear so many people talk about change. But all right, we try and bring change, but every time we try to bring change, it's pushback. And you push it back for reasons that you don't even know why. You just heard somebody else say it that you like and think, oh, they probably right. Yeah, don't do it. Shut up.
Right.
You don't even know what you're talking about.
Right.
You're just talking. That's politically anywhere, wherever you go.
Like what we're still fighting is you can't trust the school district because of the red plan, right? That happened like over 10 years.
Yep.
You know, it happened way before I got here, and I didn't do it, but I still we as an organization did, and so we have to figure out like how do we overcome that? How do we build trust? But sort of that mentality of you just can't trust the school district or they're not transparent or things like that. We're open books. Like I'll meet with anybody about anything and talk to them.
And a lot of people don't even want to get it. We have this issue here, is we have people that come in and say, "Oh, well, we didn't know about this," and it's like we sent texts, we send emails, we do phone calls, we invite you to planning sessions or dinners. We got Freedom Friday coming up this Friday where we talk about events, and we say y'all never show up. So don't tell us we don't do these things.
Yeah, our promotion team is on point.
It's
Shout
crazy.
out to Jack.
Shout out to Jack.
Right.
Boogie,
Shout out to Jack.
who get it done.
You know what I mean?
But it is you. We hear so much of the what you don't do and this and that, when in all reality you have no idea what we do, what we don't do, and do because you don't show up to them. You know, and then when you show up, all you do is complain. You never listen to listen. You listen to respond, and that's the problem with a lot of people too. You know, so. But
I do think, I mean, so it can be frustrating sometimes, but there is so much to love about Duluth, and we were talking about that before we started.
Very much.
And I remember one particular day, it was just actually a few weeks ago, and I was super frustrated about something, and the next morning I was just kind of stewing about it, and I was coming back from the gym, and I was coming over the hill, and you see the sunrise over Lake Superior, and you just like it's just like jaw-droppingly beautiful.
Yeah,
like,
most definitely.
You know, at the moment, you know, when I was stewing, I was like, this darn thing, like, you know, this is a really tough place to be. But you come over the hill, and you're just like, no, this is a beautiful place. I got to reset and just dive back into this again. But I think things can be challenging, but there's also a ton of community support. Like, if you know if you tap into the right people and tap into the right things, everybody, like there's, like I was at the Ordine Foundation celebration a couple of days back.
Last week?
Yeah, last
week. With the girls, we had our dance team there.
Yeah, that was awesome. They did a great job. They did a fantastic job.
Going crazy. Shout out to Vaughn and Bridget.
Shout out to Vaughn, Bridget.
That was a great show. But like just to hear about how many people are in different organizations dedicating their whole lives, like decades and decades of their lives, to trying to make Duluth better. Like that's, you don't find that everywhere either. No, not at all. I will say when it comes to community, you know, we even talked about this when we had Mike Sanoa on, the chief of police. Is our community is tight, you know, and when you get involved, everybody knows, you know. Everybody that knows what's going on, you know, or they know, you know, who to turn people to if they don't offer services, or if you need anything. Oh yeah, this person has this, or let me make a phone call to here. I will say that tight knit is nice, and even, you know, me being involved in this job and position for 4 years, I mean, we've made a good connection just on working with kids, or, you know, sometimes you would ask, you know,
how do we, get these people involved, this family, this child, and things like that. And then vice versa, if we have questions about students or learning plans or IEPs, we never hesitate to reach out. You probably get sick of us calling your phone, but you answer.
I call you too.
Yeah,
and
right.
Same thing, like thinking about the unity and the community thing we started a couple years ago, and last year we had over 4,000 people, and this year we had about the same. Yep. Even though it was raining, I think we would have had 6,000.
Oh yeah, if it wasn't raining, it would have been crazy.
Yeah. But I know you can call me, and I can call you, and we just work on getting stuff done. There's a new project. Actually, we've been working on it for a long time. Okay. But the Spirit Valley Wellness Center.
All right, tell us about this.
I've been working with Janet Kennedy and Russ Salgi.
Yeah, he's the man.
And he's awesome. Yeah. And then Jim Falby Williams has been working on it. Tim Meyer. Anyway, the West Side. The West Side is, when you think about community centers, they've had to close a lot of community centers because they've started falling apart, and so they have to demolish them. They need something out there as an anchor, and so the Spirit Valley Wellness Center is something that the mayor's office they're going to approach the state and federal government for bonding, but they want to build a $20 million facility out there. And you think about something like, I don't know, the Hermantown YMCA with their partnership with the schools. If we had something like that out there, which things are looking like they might happen.
Awesome, thank you.
Connected to Laura MacArthur. Okay. And Laura MacArthur has a lot of needs.
Oh yeah,
a lot of poverty, a lot of trauma, and everybody's trying to lift there, but there's also a greater need. And so we're going to go forward and try and get some state funding and state bonding. And if that happens, they're going to put in like a big basketball tournament center, and it's going to be programming for the youth services and such, and just amazing medical services and things like that, and also community schools. Yep. And so it's like everything coming to fruition. We were all pushing on it for a long time, and it felt like nothing was going to happen. And all of a sudden now it's happening.
And that's good cool. For out west, because West is big.
No, yeah, most definitely.
West is bigger than Central, where we are, and East put together, because you go all the way out towards Montelette. Yep. And you think, you got Boys and Girls Club. I don't really consider West. That's just
it's right there. It's literally, it's damn near East still.
DYC is as big as this room. Yeah. But they serve a lot of kids. So it's like it'll be good for them to get some. And we work so close with them. We do basketball every Friday. We got a lot of kids from VYC and Boys and Girls Club. They usually come here. Right. Play. And this Friday we're gonna go to Boys and Girls Club. But to be able to move around now, say, all right, we're gonna go out west and play.
Yeah, get them a third option. Exactly. They would love that.
They love it. It'd be crazy.
Or you think about like the Heritage Center and what they do for hockey. This would be that for basketball.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You'd bring in tourism. You'd bring in all kinds of stuff. Not to mention, families who are out there who want something positive to do. Sometimes I go down to the downtown Y. Sometimes I go up to Hermantown. But if you live way out west, there isn't a lot out there. There's
and it's good for kids, because I say this all the time. Well, I don't care who listening, pay attention. Ain't nothing for kids to do in Duluth except for Adventure Zone and Defy. Outside of that, there's not much. There's a lot for adults. Where there's bars and breweries. And, some food places. That's it. So to have something else like that, where, and I bring this up because there are a lot of times I work a lot with DPD, the Duluth Police Department, and the schools, and we hear a lot about kids' behaviors. And it ain't because they just bad and want to go fuck some shit up. It's purely because they ain't got nothing
else to do.
So because we tell people, if you look at the hours that we're open between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m., we don't get calls, ever. Nothing's going on in Central Hillside. The moment we close, it's over. Oh, Pez, I told y'all what was going to happen, But we got to get more for kids to do, and something else to get parents involved in as well, because that's the key. Yeah. The more you can get the parents involved in doing things with their kids and creating buy-in, the more they're going to care when their kids are home for hours or out getting in trouble or things like that. So no, I'm excited to see what's going forward with that project.
No, and I agree. And like we need to make sure that we have things for kids to do, programming in our schools. One thing, we just got a new partnership with the Duluth Transit Authority.
Yeah, I seen
so
that.
our high school kids
shout out to the DTA.
Yep. Shout out to the DTA. Shout out
Soraya.
Yeah, she spearheaded a lot of that.
Well, she pushed. Yeah, she
But
pushed
now
hard.
our students and staff from all staff and our high school kids can ride the bus for free anytime.
Yeah, that's dope.
And we got to expand that too.
Well, get me a card.
Yeah.
Not that I want to ride a bus, but it'd just be fun to just hop on a bus
cool.
and just go to the end.
But
why not?
You know, I think about what I was like when I was young. Like, I know I probably shouldn't admit all this, but like when I was a teenager, I was bored and lived in the middle of nowhere. And when you don't have something to do, you're gonna find something to do, and sometimes it's getting into trouble.
Trust me.
And I'm glad that I grew up before social media and the internet.
Most definitely. Me too.
90s, baby.
Me
and
too.
Before attendance computers. But that's when, you know, I think we have to, like you say, we got to provide things for kids, and you provide great services here. I mean, the programming here is awesome. And when I think about our kids with the greatest needs, I think about the Washington Center and what you have going on here, and I think about you know, like we wrote a grant. We had that new playground equipment put in, and it was you know, a lot of people were thinking like, well, this is a leased property, we don't own it. Like, if we put playground equipment in, is it going to be you know, are we going to have liability? Are we going to lose it if the city does something else with the building? When it comes down to it, and I've lived like a block away from here. The people in Central Hillside need something to do.
For sure,
right? Especially families. And you go over to the park across the street here, and you know, there's some good stuff going on sometimes, but also some bad stuff. I lived right across from on 4th Street, and you'd see some crazy stuff going on in the park. And hear gunshots and all kinds of stuff. We need to make sure that we have a downtown that is balanced, and not that it becomes so gentrified that we kick everybody out, but that there's a balance of positive opportunities, and but we still keep the nature of what we have here.
Definitely, yeah, because it's good to see. I remember growing up where I grew up in Jersey. Like, everywhere we went, we saw the same thing, like rundown houses, drug dealers, gangbangers, stuff like that. So we never really thought outside of that. You know, you only can adapt to what's around you. You know, and it wasn't until I started to get out of that or see different things move in and say, all right, dang, it's possible to go to school without a scholarship for sports. It's possible to get a career in this, even though I came from here. You know, so you don't. The paths are always there, even when people say there's no way. It's like, they are there, you just don't know about them. So let us help bring those things to you, you know, so you can see that all of this stuff is possible, you know, despite whatever cones and barriers may be put up. You know, we can jump those or push them out the way if we want. You know, we just gotta really get there. You know, so I appreciate this, man.
Yeah. On that note, though.
Yeah. No. Talk.
Let me just say one thing.
Say this.
When you say, why do you do what you do?
Yeah.
I grew up in a really tough circumstance, and like, I shouldn't have been one of the kids that made it, but for whatever reason, something happened and it did work out for me. And now that I'm like in charge of a whole school system, I feel like because fate fate put me in the position that I'm in.
Most definitely.
I better take that responsibility seriously and try and fix it so that it helps more kids who don't have advantage. So how are we going to have better outcomes for all kids, right? And I know that's what you're all about too.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Cool.
John Magas, the Spanish-speaking, English-teaching superintendent from the UP.
Yay.
Whatever that means, I'm about to start saying.
That's the UP.
Yay.
You know what I mean?
Thanks for coming with us.
You.
We appreciate you.
Let's get it.
Always. You bet. And
thank you.
No, thank you.
That's a wrap,
Appreciate you.
Boom.